Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 40k Fireside podcast. I'm David Gaylard, and I'm joined by my good friend Vijay. Together, we discuss 40k and the meta from our perspective, along with events we've recently been to and those that have got coming up. So come on down to the fireside and listen.
All right, and welcome back everyone to episode 19 of 40k Fireside. It is a pleasure to have you here with me and Dave. Today we're going to be focusing mainly on the London Open, which is a major event in London, England. It's one of the UKTC events, and it used to be one of these smaller kind of majors compared to some of the super major events, but it's really grown in size, and now it's coming up to about 200 players at this event.
I think it's, let me correct you on that. I think it's about 160.
160, okay.
150, 160, yeah.
Okay, so
it's still a big amount of growth from last time, though.
It's definitely a massive event, but it's not one of the absolutely huge ones. But what's quite interesting about this one is that a lot of the really good players in the country are attending this event. So we've got a lot to talk about. We're in a meta which is, probably a little bit hostile for everyone. So me and Dave aren't running the problem unit in the meta, the Desolation Marines, and we've got a lot to talk about on that regard of how to manage a meta that is like this. So. Yeah, Dave, do you want to run quickly through the points that we're going to talk about today and maybe a little plug on...
I think I'm going to do this first in case I forget. Drop us a like, comment, and subscribe. I did it. No, but seriously, guys, tell your friend about 40k Fireside podcast. Vic and I have been doing this for, I guess, 4 or 5 months now, maybe a bit longer. And we're coming up to episode 20. I know we only put out an episode every couple of weeks, something like that when we play tournaments, but we kind of keep a quality over quantity approach here. There's been a few times where Vic and I have said, we could make an episode, but we don't really have a lot of deep and meaningful insight to provide on a topic. So that's our kind of take on it. But we are going to potentially think about doing something exciting for 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. Now, I know not everyone subscribes on YouTube. They either might go on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, and we get a lot more of our content views from there. I think we just hit 2,000 unique listeners on our previous episode, or even more than that if you count all of our platforms, which is kind of crazy. But I know if you're a dedicated listener out there, you probably already told your friends about it already. But any support is great, and we're thinking about how we can kind of expand the podcast coming into this year as the game grows. But aside from that, we're going to run through what Vic and I are taking. And then in addition, we are going to be chatting about a couple of the other top lists at the event and what this might mean for the future. And finally, in the last part of the episode, we'll be talking about the balanced data slate, what we're hoping to have seen. It'd be nice if it comes out soon. Would have been nice if it came out before the tournament. What we would hope, I'll give you the unbiased opinion. Well, hopefully, but
Fantastic. We'll see you guys on the other side of a little jazz break. Back to talk about the London Open. So the London Open meta is kind of what we expect, to be honest. We're seeing a large number of top players switching over or continuing to play on Marines. And in particular, we've seen a little bit of a shift away from Space Wolves, moving on to particularly Dark Angels and Iron Hands now, which kind of makes sense to me. I think they have a few less counters in the meta than Space Wolves have. And we've got a number of top players there. So we've got Manny Malik and Alex Patford all on Dark Angels. We've got Alex Harrison and our new teammate, Chris Radford, joined Team Ignite on, yeah, what a legend, on Iron Hands. We've also got Nassim at the event, and Nassim is running Imperial Guard rather than Iron Hands, which we kind of suspected he might switch over to Iron Hands, but he's stuck at it with the Astra Militarum. Dave's also on the Astra Militarum, and then we've got a few other good players on Eldar. We've got Conrad, me, we've got Clement and Daniel Whittaker all playing Eldar, so a little bit of representation on that side. But that's really the kind of very known players there, and we don't exactly have the stats of the rest of the meta split, but that's a pretty good indication of what's doing well in the meta.
Should I look it up right now? Actually, I'm gonna look at some. 1, 2, 3 is 10 guard players.
Okay.
Dark Angels, and then there's 11 Dark Angels players.
Oh, interesting.
And then Iron Hands is 4 Iron Hands players, and Adeptus Astartes. There's another 3 on top of that. I know one of them is an Iron Hands player, so that puts us about 5 Iron Hand players, and then Space Wolves. We've got about 4 there, so 5 and 4 is 11. There's 20 of the 20 players running a combination of Space Wolves, Iron Hands, or Dark Angels at the event out of 149 players. So it's quite a large representation there. I think that's
nice.
very big. What would be another popular one? World Eaters, maybe? No, not too many. There's about 6 there. So yeah, it's definitely. I think if we look at the meta at the London Open as an evolution of Manchester, I think there's a lot of telling statistics there. Now, I did make a comment in Manchester that in round 4, all of the guard players would lose, and they did. Every single guard player, and there were 6 of them going into round 4 with 0 of them being in a tournament-winning position after round 4. And I think that statistic really shows going into the London Open, because guard were the most popular faction going into Manchester Super Major, and now we are maybe 3rd or 4th here now. Chaos Demons has another 10 as well. So it's definitely been a little bit of a shift in Garden, and I know that pain for sure. It's tough, isn't it, right now?
Yeah,
for a lot of people.
I would say and this is something I think you get stick for on the internet, which I think is a bit unfair, which is saying that Guard requires a bit of skill to really succeed with it. And I agree with you, because I also went into that round 4 looking at the pairings and being like, yeah, I mean, there's a skill disadvantage here for all of the guard players. It was like that was part of the issue alongside a list disadvantage. And the only way you can compensate for that list disadvantage is with a skill advantage. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how you and Nas kind of perform with your Astra Militarum lists at this event.
Yeah, because I would say that counterwise to that, the top of the meta is relatively similar, right? So the combination of Dark Angels, Iron Hands, and Space Wolves, the prevalence of Desolation Marines, which we're going to be talking about a lot today. So if you don't like that, then maybe skip 50 minutes. But that actually, the top end hasn't actually changed that much. I think there's been a groundswell of change in the bottom, or i.e. factions that are not playing that unit. And we've seen that with Guard in particular, because I think Guard was maybe the most susceptible faction to the Desolation Marine, because they not only get countered by the indirect, but also the direct fire as well.
Yeah, the profiles are very aggressively tailored to dealing with Guard. So let's move on to some happier stuff. Let's talk about our list, man. So
that's happy.
I think that's really happy.
Are you playing Desolation Marines? Are you happy?
Because I am not playing Desolation Marines, and I'm still playing Eldar. And I am getting so much love from the community for actually sticking to Eldar through this. And everyone's like asking me to come onto their podcast, talk about it and things. So I've
bastion of hope.
So I'm here with my Eldar, and I had a really good run at Manchester, getting through some Desolation Marine armies, and I've kind of adapted my list because I went into Manchester without knowledge of how intense the Desolation Marine uptake would be, but now I know. So
do you think, before you go in, do you think it has intensified even more? Because sometimes we see in a meta, say Manchester, where it kind of explodes and is extremely intense in the top tables, and then people kind of counter that, and then you're a week behind the meta. Do you think people have gone to, all the top players have then tried to counter Desolation Marines, so there's actually less in total, or do you think actually it's just as intense as it was before?
I think it's optimized now, because if you look at all of the top Dark Angels and Iron Hands players and what they're all bringing 3x5 Desolation Marines, and I think that is optimal to just lean into the Vanguard launches. And I thought maybe someone might try and just shift everything and just completely skew as a counter to the Desolation Marines, but none of these players have. They've all kind of stuck with it and kind of dug in a bit deeper into it almost.
It's a common theme that we're going to talk about later in the episode, which is my one graft with this, is that the only counter to Desolation Marines, it seems to be, is to play your own indirect to a point, which is frustrating. But Vic, you were playing some indirect as well.
I am. I mean, I was playing a bit of indirect before, and I'm still playing quite a similar amount of indirect here, just with a shift in the type of units that I'm taking. So my list is a far-flung craft world. It's expert crafters and masterful shots, which is ignore cover and reroll a wound. That's the one I've kind of been sticking with rather than swift strikes.
Yeah, you've been playing that for a long time, right?
Yeah, I've got through lots of games with it now, and been having pretty good success against a variety of armies, and even against the Desolation Marine. unit. So I hope people find this interesting and useful. I've had a few people in the community try my list design and have some real success with it as well. So, if you listen to this and you find it interesting, give it a go. The list starts off with 2 Phoenix Lords. So I've got Baharoth, which is auto take, but I've also got Irilith in my list. So Irilith is the Shadow Spectre Phoenix Lord.
I've never seen this model on the table. I'm just putting it out there.
So Irilith, I think, is a little bit of a hidden gem. And I think Irilith has been good for a while. The model is actually out of production, but the unit is not in Legends. The unit is not very powerful, but it fits the role very well of a second Phoenix Lord here.
Is it one of those things where it's maybe not that good, but because the meta shifts and the defensive profile shift, suddenly it becomes good?
Yeah, I think I just wanted second Phoenix Lord, and then everything else is kind of like, nothing's perfect here. Let's go for like what I think would work the best. And I think Irilith with the 12-inch move, it is a jump pack unit. It's got a good gun as well, damage 3, strength 8, AP 4 gun. Low number of shots, only 3 shots, but actually it's a very convenient profile for this meta. And yeah, apart from that, it's just Phoenix Lord defensive profile for some primary control, which I think is critical when you're going into an indirect meta, because you lose a lot of your units. Like, you can't just throw one unit onto an objective and expect to hold it, because that unit will get disintegrated and your opponent will use their indirect fire as control for your primary score.
And they're phase capped, right? So both of the Baharoth and the Irilith, you can only deal 3 damage to a turn, right?
Not only are they phase cap, but they're also obsec. So it's a very good primary control unit.
Yeah, allows you to hold an objective in the open, right?
Exactly, which is important for UKTC, because all of the objectives outside your deployment zone are pretty much in the open. And then we've got a Farseer Skyrunner. I've included some fluff because this is very much like the Craftful Chimera kind of lore. So this Farseer is their head Farseer guy. He's got, I know, I'm living my best life. So he's got Executioner and the gain of CP. He's also got Kurnos's bow, but I haven't taken the Warlord trait in this list. Just Kurnos's bow. I just found it's not really worth the CP for the second part of this in this. I've got 5 Corsairs sticking to the lore because they came and helped find Irilith's armor in the lore. So the Corsairs are here. Then we've got 6 Dire Avengers. We've got 2 Warlock Skyrunners. There's a little bit of new tech. Both of them have Quicken and Restraint, so no Protect Jinx in this list. And one of them has the Phoenix gem in case he blows his head off. I don't lose both Warlocks that way. I still keep that one alive.
Blows his head off means perils and then dies, right?
Perils and then dies. He's only a 3-wound Psyker.
So I take it you want to cast Quicken and Restrain in a lot of games, right? Restrain actually quite good against those models that can only move 5 inches at a time?
I've just found Restrain really good just generally. So even not just against Dark Angels, just again, like if I play against Space Wolves, just like pinning one of the jump pack units, reduce them to 6-inch movement is a lot more manageable. Yeah, huge value. And then we've got the indirect fire component. I've got 2 single D cannons down from my 3 D cannons from before. 2 Night Spinners with Shuriken cannons and Crystal Targeting Matrix. We've got a War Walker, a single War Walker. It's kind of my replacement for the Ranger squad I used to have in. I found that I can block out pods just with a single War Walker. And he's kind of like almost like my Striking Scorpions as well, which I'm missing in this list because you can just run at you turn 1 and try and get behind enemy lines. And then I've got a light traveling patrol because Irilith basically saw my mirror in his dreams, and I think it was the Harlequins who did that. So I've got a Shadowseer, 2 units of 5 troops. One of them has a kiss and an embrace.
Just to clarify, you're not joking right now, right? Like, you're actually playing?
No, this is actually from Imperial Armor Volume 11, and I have quoted that in my list.
You guys can't tell, but my face is like in my palm of my hand right now.
There's somebody out there who's going to become like a big fan of me after this. So I've got a Death Jester with Harvester of Torment in favor of Segarak, the usual combo. I've got 2 Star Weavers in an interesting new little tech piece. Instead of the 3rd Shroud Runner unit, I've got 2 Sky Weavers here. Just to the 22-inch move, the AP3 profile on the guns, very relevant for this meta. With the bowlers, and I don't have the Wraiths here in this list, which I had before. So I've actually got a unit which can tuck into the middle L, and be at least a little bit forward deployed. So
no Twilight Pathways, so you can't double move them there, right?
Oh yeah, I have. My Shadowseer's got Mirror of Minds and Twilight Pathways, so I have got like a chunky move on turn 1 if needed.
I like those.
Yeah, just to tag up, if I can tag up some Desolation Marines, that would be amazing. And now anyone who's listened to this podcast will keep their Desolation Marines a few inches further back. It's great.
That's what we're trying to do, though. Those are the incremental wins that we go for. Just keep the Desolation Marines a few inches back.
So that's my list, man. And actually, I'm really loving it. So I think it's, not the strongest list in the world, but it's got every tool needed to give everyone a game. And that's the position I'd love to be in.
Yeah.
I found in all my practice games against Marines, I was the one who was kind of controlling the tempo.
Mm-hmm.
And a big part of that is like what you said to me, which was people don't really know how this list actually plays on the board. If you look at it on a piece of paper, it just looks like a bunch of nonsense.
Yep.
And it is a bunch of nonsense, but it's nonsense which all comes together quite well. So I'm looking forward to kind of testing my mettle against some of these stronger lists.
Yeah, but of course, playing Eldar, you've got a huge capacity for player expression there, right? Mm-hmm. So that's where it gets amplified the most, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's an exciting part of 40k. I think being able to express your player skill. But that's enough about me and the elves, Dave. I think there are a lot of people who play Imperial Guard, a lot of people who play Astra Militarum, and want to really know about what can you do to deal with this nonsense indirect meta.
Oh man. It's funny because I said in the last podcast episode, I was like, I'm not playing Guard. No, I'm not gonna do it. But guess what? I lied. So I'm unashamedly, I told a little bit of a porcupine, a little bit of a fib, because I knew that there was going to be some people that would listen to that and be like, no, he's going to play something. So I was like, you know what? I'll tell a little porcupine. But I've been enjoying the Guard, and it's funny because I think you and I, maybe you more so because you've been playing the game longer, but I have basically always played the strongest army in the game. Mm-hmm. And, within a 15, within a 5 to 7% difference, right? Mm-hmm. Strongest army in the game within that. But this tournament feels like one of those ones where I'm really not playing the strongest army in the game by a reasonable margin. Mm-hmm. Also, when I played Demons at Coventry as well. Demons weren't great there either. So it's a little bit of a strange situation. I wasn't in the space. The problem is I was still really enjoying Guard. Mm-hmm. And I really enjoy the playstyle and the expression in it, and I think it's very strong. But there's no getting around the fact that Desolation Marines are just brutal against your army. So I wanted to kind of think of a way that you could play against them, and there are really two different ways that you can approach this, and I think most people in the meta have gone this way as well. And I think if you were to take a closer look at the shift of the underbelly of the meta, non-Desolation Marines, you would find that it either gravitates towards one or two of these positions. And I think yours is you've got transport options, so it's the same, but people leaning into more indirect to go right against those profiles, or going into more durability, more transport, more duo phase defensive profiles. Duo phase, I mean, transports or melee plus some phase capping or something. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to play Guard, and I didn't want to give up on it. So you know what? I went through quite a bit of experimentation, and initially I thought, you know what? There are a lot of limitations to Desolation Marines. But what I think has happened is that some players have gravitated towards, like you said, Vic, the Iron Hands build, which previously lacked that utility that Desolation Marines had, where you could maybe blow something up and then shoot what's inside it with the Vengor launchers. Desolation Marines, I think, are the best in Iron Hands. I think Iron Hands might be the best army in the game, but I mean, it's so close between Dark Angels, Iron Hands, Space Wolves, just insert generic Marine data sheet into those, and it's pretty much the same. I mean, all these lists are very, very similar to each other, to their predecessor lists. Iron Hands, Dark Angels. Those lists haven't really innovated much because I think they're pretty much found out. Once you stick 400, 500 and odd points of indirect in there, 600, sorry. There's not a lot of wiggle room. So you're basically just playing the data sheets that you ought to be taking there. Mm-hmm. So anyway, back to Guard. I played a few games and got absolutely destroyed by my teammates, Jockle and Chris, and Brian as well. And, I just thought, maybe there's some answer, to these Desolation Marines. And I was looking at the other side of the equation all of a sudden, which is the what if I just shoot their indirect with my indirect? And so I thought, there's a couple of options Guard have there. They have got some indirect, but the difference between mortars and all the other indirect in the Guard book is like night and day. Mortars are incredible into some platforms, but honestly, into Marines and Dark Angels, they're actually not that good. You're taking more or less 2-up saves if you're in cover, which all of their all of their Desolation Marines are, and then they could simply shoot your mortars off and die anyway with their Vingal launcher, which is basically what they're designed to kill. So, mortar's not really that good. Then we've got the Field Ordnance Battery, which is the new model range on the 80mm base, which can move, and it's sort of like a Night Spinner, right? It's considerably less tanky though, but it can get an order.
Yep.
But it is strength 7, -2, flat 2.
Yep, same profile.
Yep, which is an average of 7 shots on 2d6. So that's an alright option, but its fragility means that it could probably get killed. You've then got the Basilisk, which is a 140-point indirect unit, which has off the top of my head, I want to say a strength 10, -3, damage 2, d6 plus 3. It can be ordered to reroll 1s. So that's the order. Well, that's the order it can get, but it'll be mostly hitting on 5s then. So the Basilisk is interesting. It provides a more durable chassis. So because it's T7 and 3-up base save, it's quite difficult for the Vingal launchers to get through that. And in a game that goes 10 turns, sure, like your Basilisks are going to win outright. And then there's the one.
Here we go.
There's this thing called the Earthshaker carriage battery. I'm gonna look at. Hold up. I'm gonna just make sure I'm getting it right here, because I wouldn't want to bastardize it. It's the Earthshaker carriage battery. Yes. I mean, I should know this because I'm playing 3 of them. So, the Earthshaker carriage battery, man, it's a bit of a tongue twister, is an old Forge World unit, guys. Now, this model costs £100 per month.
Oh my goodness.
And it's 120 points, so it's almost £1 per point. So obviously I'm not playing the Forge World one. I'm going to print my own. Well, I have printed my own and painted them up and putting all the Guard fluff and everything and all the decals and stuff. So why am I playing the Earthshaker battery? So it has D6 plus 3 shots. It can be ordered for the regimental orders, which is quite big because it means that you can take aim it, so you can get +1 to hit, and then you can get +1 AP. So that means that if it's not shooting through dense, it hits on 4s, which is a lot better than all the other Guard indirect. And then it's strength 10, -4 with take aim, damage 2. And if you play 3 of them, you should be getting an average of around about 19.5 to 20 shots, hitting on 4s. 6 is auto wound, and then of course, if you're smart like me, then you're playing the 1 unit of 3, so you can spend 1 CP to auto wound on 5s to hit with the Born Soldier stratagem. Beautiful. So that's the tech. I mean, it basically kills. It really depends on the matchup because Iron Hands have the Feel No Pain and Dark Angels have the Apothecary. But if they don't have that, then it kind of kills like 5 Desolation Marines in cover, and they're 120 points. And their largest drawback, though, is that they are very large.
They're a bit huge.
They're chunky boys. So yeah, I mean, I will be tucking them in my L as best as I possibly can. There's some configurations where you can use them. That you can have like 2 in the L and then 1 behind the L, and and obscuring and stuff. But hopefully, I mean, people just won't be able to get those extreme angles back into the bottom of my L to shoot. And just go. Obviously, it has to be said that the UKTC, I think, from any terrain format, amplifies the power of indirect fire simply because we do have those large L ruins, the big legacy ones from ITC 8th edition.
Yeah.
But so what's the rest of the list? The rest of the list is I'm playing KD Command School with the Ogryn. I've got a Deathcore Marshal. Now I've got a little bit of tech here. And spoiler alert, what you can do is you can take the Laurels of Command, which is a relic that gives them the upgrade to allow you to do a order in the command phase, which is really cool. It's a cool piece of tech. And what you can do is you can order your Earthshaker batteries to be in cover, so you can get that 3-up base save for 1 turn, which is could be the difference maker versus these AP2 Vingal launchers.
Nice.
So even if I go second, maybe there's some shots I can still shoot them with all 3. And then what else have I got? I've got I got a tank commander with all flamers. I've got another Leman Russ with all flamers. I've got 3 units of 10 shock troops, so I'm still running a good amount of infantry there. I've got 2 chimeras, and I've got 2 units of 10 Kasrkin. So I've got one with mechanized infantry, one with the Barbican's Key and brutal strength, just max volley shots on all of them. Then I'm playing 1 unit of 2 armored sentinels, 1 unit of 1 armored sentinel. No, I'm playing 1 unit of 3 armored sentinels, 1 armored sentinel solo, and then 3 scout sentinels as well. So, I mean, at the end of the day, in a meta this kind of roll-offy and just chucking dice at your opponents, I just figured, you know what, maybe my luck's going to turn around once and I'm just going to go first in one of these really important games. And guess what? I've got 3 Earthshaker batteries, I've got 2 chimeras, and I've got my whole army that can redeploy basically and then take the whole board position. And then I've got 3 scout sentinels that are going to move with 4 rerolls to hit and wound and charge you on turn 1. So go have fun.
Yeah, there's definitely some alpha strike involved in there, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So I think this list is really good, Dave. I think you've got every single tool, somehow managed to squeeze everything in.
Yeah. I forgot. I've got 1 unit of 3 mortars as well. That was the big one I was thinking. Because I was like, should I go Sly Marbo? Because they're both 50-ish points. Can I go Sly Marbo? And Sly Marbo can score you boots on the ground for the guard plays out there. Which is a really good option into Vengal launches. If you play Sly Marbo, you can get boots on the ground and character protect him. So it's really hard to kill there. And then he can maybe deep strike and then maybe hit some Desolation Marines on the charge, perhaps. But I went with the Mortar Squad because against infiltrators, you can proc the save Helix on them first, and then you can shoot them with your Earthshakers. And then you can still get boots on the ground with them. And I wanted a little bit of hedge against armies like Daemons and maybe some Eldari or something like that too.
Yeah.
But that was a really close call. And I think the 3-man mortar is just a little bit nice because you can still put 4 rolls to hit and wound on them. You've still got that max utility for just playing 1 with that last lot as well.
No, I really like it. I think that single unit of mortars is a lot of value. And, you're not just going to play Marines all time. Hopefully not. But, you are going to play other stuff. And mortars are generally quite an awesome unit for the points. So I think, you've got everything you need here, Dave. You just need a few things to go your way. And sometimes that's how you fight an uphill meta. Just hope that, in the games where it counts, I like it, David Gaylard, shake and bake.
The thing is, you can I think so perhaps some viewers will be in a similar situation to this, right? You can, in a tournament where maybe you're not playing the best army in the game, you can design a well-rounded list to maybe lose on average every game by 10%, and then hopefully, on player skill leverage, you'll be winning at even or winning that game, perhaps, right? Or you can maybe take a little bit of risk and just accept that risk up front and just say, look, I'm a little bit behind, but under these circumstances, I can really win. And I think I'm interested to hear what you think about this too, but as kind of someone at the top, when there's maybe a lower skilled player playing a list like that and accepting that argument from the get-go with their list, it makes me a little bit worried because actually the truth is, even if someone has a 15% chance to beat me, that's a lot better than what they normally would because they're taking a little bit of a risk, and actually the chances of them winning are dramatically higher. And if it's just one game, then, hey, roll the dice, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it. And that's the life we're living as well.
Yeah. Oh dear.
Well, we've talked about our lists. We've gone through some analysis on why we've made the choices that we've made. And I think it would be a good idea to touch on a couple of the Space Marine factions that are seeing some prevalent use at the top of the meta. And we're going to split this up between Dark Angels and Iron Hands. And you've been talking for a bit, so shall I hit up some?
Go for the Iron Hands. I think you should start with Chris Radford's list.
Do you think so?
Yeah, of course.
So,
because it's kind of a list, I think, that is born out of our team in a lot of. I mean, not saying that we completely innovated the list, but both Brian, Jockel, and Chris worked together on this list to come to kind of a conclusion.
Chris and Jockel and Brian, they've all got this awesome Iron Hands list. So, just to go through it, it is Iron Hand successors with Whirlwind of Rage, which is the Exploding Sixes, I think, and Master Artisans, which is reroll a hit roll windroll. And then he's got a Primaris Lieutenant, with Rights of War, OPSEC Horror. He's got a Primaris Tech Marine with Target Protocols, which gives another reroll to hit or wound. That's a nice little bit of tech just to get a lot of value out of one of the Vengor launches. He's got 2 units of Infiltrators, 3 Helix Gauntlets now, Relic Contemptor, the usual outrageous guy with Merciless Logic. He's got 1 Scout Squad. Did he not get the second one? No, just 1 Scout Squad. 3 single Land Speeder Tornadoes and a Land Speeder Storm to go with the Scout Marines. He's got 2 units of 5 Vanguard Veterans and 3 times 5 Desolation Marines, all with Supercrack. And one of them has a mastercrafted Vengor launcher for the damage 3. He's got 2 units of 5 Devastator Marines, 3 Grav, 1 Melter, and a drop pod to carry them. So that's a very powerful, well-rounded list with a good secondary game, a little bit of primary control from the Scouts and the Infiltrators, and an insane amount of output across the game. So this is a proper, like, I will score 100 on you if you can't deal with me kind of list, and it's awesome for this format.
This list is, I think, been the one that's improved the most, but obviously Iron Hands is already strong, but this is where Desolation Marines really cover a lot of bases, where, because in a large part you are kind of single phase activation outside of your Vanguard veterans, but it's not guaranteed that you get to use them offensively because people will target them. You get to pop up in transports and then shoot them with your Vengor launchers and then your the other indirect that they have as well. So I mean, it just covers the base and it offers such a strong shooting element to the list. Obviously then you can, I think in Iron Hands you can actually afford to play them a bit more aggressively and just pop out and shoot everything as well, because once they counterpunch to shoot that, you've got your Redemptor looking at everything as well, and the Iron Hands secondaries and units that you can take really allow you to just consistently score things like Oath of Moments, but obviously Codex Warfare as well, guys. Super easy, and Shock Tactics is really good in this list as well, because it's got a really good speed element to it, which is something that just feels, if it didn't have the speed, like, it wouldn't be such a big deal, but it's got the speed, hasn't it?
It has, and it comes in waves. It's just a really tough list to deal with. And I think that's a characteristic of these Marine lists, is the fact that they get so much stuff in their list. It does feel like you're getting hit by kind of 3 separate waves across the course of the game, and you deal with one. You kind of slightly overcommit to deal with the first layer. Let's say in this case, it's kind of like the Devastator Marines and the Vanguard Vets. You just about deal with those guys, but in order to deal with them, you've kind of exposed yourself. And then the second layer hits you, which is the attrition from the Desolation Marines and the Contemptor. And then you've got these little land speeders that you go and try and deal with, and you trade down, because actually they're only 70 points, which is outrageous. So,
and with Master Artisans, they can maybe get into targets they really want to get into, and it's really tough. And it's really difficult to say, for example, we're playing my list with the Earthshaker Carriage. What element do you shoot into first? Do you shoot the Desolation Marines first? Do you split because of the stratagem? Do you shoot the Vanguard Vets? Do you shoot the Infiltrators? Do you shoot the Land Speeders? I mean, I wish I could shoot all of them, but obviously you can't. So it's really tough, man. I don't know the honest answer. Maybe you just shoot everything else and then hope that they fade their their Vengor launcher rolls one shot, right?
I mean, I played against Yokel and Chris, and there were so many targets that I didn't actually shoot my indirect at the Desolation Marines at all. I just tried to kill the stuff in front of me so that I don't get overwhelmed.
The only benefit is that the Desolation Marines are the one thing that don't have the speed, right? So I can really understand the argument. If you hit the things with the speed, then you can maybe play around them a little bit.
And I mean, so we've got Alex Harrison on one. He's just basically swapped out some of the more balanced elements for a bit of Alpha Strike.
He's got quite a bit different list though.
He has.
He's got the double Invictor Warsuit.
So those guys can forward deploy, and it essentially just leans fully into an Alpha Strike here, which makes sense. I mean, the other option for winning against an indirect meta is just to Alpha Strike it. He's got triple Devastator. He's only got 2 units of Desolation Marines here. 2 units of Desolation.
And he's also the Gladiator Reaper.
And he's got a Gladiator Reaper, So no Scouts. Interesting. Fair enough. Very kind of similar style, but different. So
I wonder if there's a little bit of model availability issue, if I'm being honest, because I don't think the Gladiator Reaper sticks out as being a little bit of a weird choice, whereas you could maybe get a speeder plus Scouts. So Maybe there's something like that.
Or just another Desolation Marine squad.
Yeah, just more. Wait, you're only playing 10 Desolation Marine?
Yeah, I missed that. He's only got 10.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. But he's got the... yeah. I mean, this list is still really strong. And with the Invicta, look, I mean, I can't be hypocritical of what I just said before as well, Sometimes you're just going to roll and go first, right?
Yeah, and just punch him in the face.
Yep. Get him with the Invicta Claw, I think it's called.
Awesome. So that's the Iron Hand side. And we've got 3 really good players on the Dark Angels. Actually, the Dark Angels list, it's one of those lists that just makes me feel a little bit sick, to be honest, because it's not fun to play with. It's not fun to play against. And it
makes you wonder who's having fun at the table.
I'm actually a little bit disappointed that all 3 of these players have stuck and carried on with this, to be honest, because there is a point where you get bored with this kind of list.
Vic, we all know that I played this list like 3 times for our teammates for testing. I was bored after like turn 2 of game 1.
Yeah.
These lists are incredibly dull.
And they've only gotten more dull, like the latest iterations. It's only
at least worse. Before you could play like speeders and stuff. But,
Okay, go on, Dave.
Okay, well, it would be rude not to start with the champion of Manchester, so we'll start with managing his list. He's playing the Acolyte now, which I think is something that a lot of the Imperium factions are picking up on, the 10-point character. If you've got 10 points, here's a good thing to do a banner with. You can chuck it. He doesn't really... Well, okay, I'll take that back. 1, 2, 3, 4 characters now, so you're probably
5.
still not taking it.
He's got Blade Guard Ancient as well, so he's got 5.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. So, assassination is not, is not terrible because they will take behind enemy lines, and to score behind enemy lines with 2 Raven Wing Talon Masters will mean that they will choose to do that. So you can potentially get assassinated on there, which is, there you go, guys. But anyway, playing the Acolyte 10-point character. He's got a Captain, Decisive Tactician, Aura. I don't know what that does.
I think that's the second OBSEC.
No, that's...
Oh, is it not?
We're running a professional podcast here. Okay. Just give us some time, or we're definitely not on Wikipedia right now. Okay, well... it's +1 to advantage and charge.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Okay, +1 to advantage. So that's on the Primaris Captain. Fair.
Yeah, so what that is that there are some breakpoints where if you're taking Oath of Moments, then you need to get, maybe you need to roll like a 3 to advance to get in the middle of the objective from some of the ruins. I know that came up in Manny and I's game. So that's just +1 to advance there. But it does go through a CP. So... and then we've got Rights of War on the Talon Master, and then we've got Arbiter's Gaze, of course. Arbiter's Gaze being extremely good. And he's got a Blade Guard Ancient with the OBSEC, or double OBSEC if you are OBSEC. And then he's also got the Pennant, which is the -1 damage. He's got 2 units of 10 Deathwing Terminators, of course, 2 Cyclones, we've all been there, and another unit of 5, 25 total. 2 Land Speeders with Multi-Melters. The fact that those things are 60 points is just ridiculous.
It's a bit sad.
And then he's got 15 Desolation Marines. Now, what I thought was interesting here is that he has opted not to take the damage 3 Vingal Launcher. So I think Manny is the only person not playing that, which, to be honest with you, I mean, I'm happy about, because the damage 3 breakpoint into my Earthshaker is quite big. So, I mean, I'm happy about that. But it's an interesting choice because he has got the CP there to do it. And I know he's taken, for example, Decisive Tactician just over the Mastercraft of Vingal Launcher, right?
Maybe well, he's still got a CP in his list, so he wants to start at 1 for some reason. I mean, there's a lot of good 2 command point stratagems. So yeah, he's probably holding off one of those.
The overrun, hit and run stratagem.
Yeah, exactly.
Counts as stationary, obviously.
Exactly. So maybe he wants that in case he goes first. So who knows? But he hasn't got it, and he hasn't got an apothecary.
I'm glad you brought it up, because that's another great thing that I'm looking at. The apothecary provides the 6-up feel no pain against damage, of course, and allows you to revive the Desolation squad. So the APOC is very good at an attrition-based game and an indirect war. And I think that, I mean, no doubt Manny will know better than myself on this list, but I feel like that one would have been a good one to have, maybe.
Yeah, the combo of kind of your Vango launcher dies, and then you regenerate your Vengor launcher after it's shot on death is really, really powerful.
Yeah, and you could, for example, drop the captain and the acolyte, and that would be 90 points to the Ravenwing Apothecary. It's an interesting choice.
I mean, have Alex and Malik both got the Apothecary?
Yeah,
they do.
They both have it as well. Yeah. So Malik and Alex, former teammates of ours, are playing very similar lists. They, interestingly enough, have opted against Arbiter's Gaze on the Ravenwing Telemaster, which is a bit strange to me because I think it's potentially the best upgrade in the game. Maybe they have both got
no mastercrafted Vengor launcher here either, Dave.
What? No.
Let's check Malik's one.
Malik's does have a mastercrafted Vengor launcher.
Malik's does. Alex's doesn't.
Yeah. So I think Malik is playing what looks to be about 18 Terminators, but he is playing 2 Whirlwind Scorpiuses and 15 Desolation Marines. So I'm just going to do a little bit of math here. 185. This is 900 points of indirect fire. So coming up about half the list. Which is a lot. So I think it'd be really interesting to see what happens when, like, for example, Manny's list clashes against this list, because obviously he does have 7 more Terminators, and he's got the Ravenwing Telemaster on top of that, and he's got the Arbiter's Gaze as well. So,
but I've noticed Alex and Malik's list both have Ezekiel in there, which can give the full rerolls to hit and wound to one of the Terminator squads.
Yes.
There's
Fight Last as well, right? I think is the engulfing fear ability.
Lots of tech.
You still have to cast it in the mirror, right? And they get the deny from the...
Yeah, but it's a defensive cast, isn't it? It's a buff, so usually you can keep buffs out of range of denies.
Is this the Fight Last one a buff, is it?
No, not the Fight Last, sorry. The reroll hits and wounds, which is the more important one.
Yeah. Yeah, so, interesting. I mean, we're seeing all different flavors of indirect variants of it now, isn't it? Now, I know Malik submitted a very similar list to this last time, but didn't end up playing the tournament, so... we'll see if it comes to fruition this time. I can't imagine that's a very entertaining weekend of play. We just get them shit. So that's where the Dark Angels have gone. Now, someone who I think is quite interesting is Adam Lane seems to just play the previous winning list or one of the previous top winning lists of the previous tournament. I've noticed that. He'll either play the exact list or he'll play someone who came second. But he is on Space Wolves as well. He's got 2 units of Desolation Marines, 1 unit of Long Fangs, 3 units of Skyclaws, which have really good value in them, 3 units of Wolfen, 3 units of Wolf Guard, 2 units of Infiltrators, and just 1 HQ just to Captain on Bike. So
I think this is his list. I don't think he's copied this one.
I wasn't at the previous tournament, so I don't know what Alex Harrison was playing.
I think this is a little bit different. To give Adam Lane his credit, it is a little bit different. And I think this list epitomizes what Space Wolves can do. It's just 1 million melter guns in complete MSU. When they deploy it, it looks like a horde of Marines. It'd be really interesting to see how he gets on. Actually, this is actually a pretty fun list to play, to be honest. So you just kind of like run at your opponent. You got all your little tech pieces, and all of a sudden you can just blow up any tank you look at. So best of luck to Adam for that one.
Yep, that's going to be good. And I guess so. We should touch on Nassim's list because obviously Nassim and I chat a little bit about Guard. We're probably, I guess, the 2 preeminent Guard players in the UK right now. Now, what I think is interesting is Nassim has gone the opposite direction that I've gone. Now, whether this is due to model availability or not is, there is a reality that comes into that, guys, that not everyone can just get these ridiculous Forge World models. But he's gone the other way, and he's got a lot of Sentinels, and I think this is a good list. So let me run through it first before I talk about it. KD Command Squad with the Ogre and Finial, redeploy, blah, blah, blah. Death Corps Marshal, who is my boyo. Leontis with the 5-up CP regain. And Tank Commander with Gatekeeper, Meticulous Calibrator, which is Ignore Cover. 3 units of Shock Troops. 2 units of Kassakin. Now, he's gone with Veteran Guerrillas, which is Ignore Cover on his Barbican Key unit, instead of the Ignore Heavy Penalty, which is interesting. There is merit to both. The argument being, if you're in Veteran Guerrillas, then you can tie your Finial into the range and you ignore the heavy penalty anyway. And then the brutal strength argument is that you can operate independent of where your finial is. So that's the pros and cons of them. The brutal strength version is just a little bit better operating in and of itself, and it gets +1 to strength when you charge or something like that. But I mean, with 4 rolls hit and wound, they're not bad. But the meat and potatoes of this list, he's got 2 units of 3 armored sentinels, 1 unit of 2 armored sentinels, and 1 unit of 3 scout sentinels. So all in up, he's got 8 armored sentinels and 3 scout sentinels for 11 sentinels total. Now, in addition to that, he's got 2 units of 3 heavy mortar squads. So just 2 squads of 3 mortars. And then he's got the Lemonrise battle tank. He is playing armored tracks on his, and he's got the flamer loadout with the executioner plasma, which I think is the right choice in the meta now. And then he's got 1 chimera with the heavy flamers. So I guess the thing that I would be worried about this list is that its footprint is very, very large. So actually, in my list, I opted to shave off one of these sentinels to reduce my footprint a little bit when I skimmed my points to get the 40 points. And Nassim has gone the other way, and he's got 3 Leman Russes, 11 sentinels, and a chimera. It's going to be difficult to hide all that, and the problem when you play guard is that when you put a lot into reserve, it hampers your secondaries a lot, and it hampers your board position quite a lot, because you don't get orders when you come out of strat reserve. So it'll be really interesting to see how it goes. Obviously, if he goes first, this list has a ton of board presence, so it'll be extremely hard to shift because there is a lot of thickness in the 3 Leman Russes and obviously 11 Sentinels. So we'll have to see how it goes, man. But the thing is, with that direct fire with the Desolation Marines, they have a lot of output. So that's the one downside to having a big footprint. Obviously, Nassim's a great player though, so it'd be really interesting to see how each of us go. We're both playing the Scout Sentinels, which is something I previously didn't play, but I think I'm going to need a little bit of luck, which I think Scout Sentinels are great at.
At the top of Nassim's list, he's written, "I'm just trying to survive the desolation of London that has come about due to Manchester and Peak Games Workshop rules writing." Hit the nail on the head, Nas.
Nail on the head there. Yeah. So I guess that's Marines and Guard, and then you, Vic, as well. Were there any other lists? I've got one other list I wanted to.
Oh yeah, go on, go for it.
So my good friend Jack Tite is playing Tzeentch Demons, which I think is a very interesting list in the meta right now. He's playing Be'lakor. He's playing Mono Tzeentch, Be'lakor, Fate Skimmer, Flux Master, 1 unit of 10 Pink Horrors, 2 Exalted Flamers, 3 units of 5 Flamers, 1 unit of 3 Screamers, 2 Burning Chariots, and he's actually got 2 Chaos Knights here with the Stubbers, Wardog Executioners, and the Mirror of Fates upgrade. I think this is an interesting list. I could definitely see the logic behind moving into something like Tzeentch, where you get the -1 to hit Warp Storm ability outside of 12, and then you have a natural 3-up invulnerable save against what is ultimately going to be a lot of Desolation Marines. So I am actually surprised that maybe Alex Harrison didn't play Tzeentch Demons, because I know he played that at the International. Low-key, that might have been a cool list.
Yeah, well, good luck to Jack. This is, I would love it if just something just completely left field just won the tournament. That would be so good. So I'm rooting for anyone not playing Desolation Marines is my
So
my aim for the event.
I mean, is between us and all honesty, is there realistically anything else here that could, threaten the top of the curve here?
No, I think that covers like the bulk of the lists and kind of like highlighted the key lists. And I think probably what's more interesting is kind of what our aim is going into an event like this, where we're a little bit behind. Like, are you still going in, Dave, with the mindset that you want to win the event, or where are you at?
I'm going to say my philosophy hasn't changed that much since Southampton, because it worked really well for me there. I'm just going to, I'm taking a little bit of a gamble, and I think with gambles, you've just got to accept it up front, right? You've got to accept that.
Take it.
If it doesn't go your way, it doesn't go your way. You can't get angry at yourself for making the decision after the fact, which I think is really easy to get sucked into. The reality is that you're taking a risk, and sometimes risks pay off. and it's important just not to look at them in hindsight and just look at them in percentages, right? Like, you're 10% behind, but you could get a big swing that puts you 30% up, on a 50% roll off, for example, right? Doesn't always go like that. Like, Triple Earthshaker's got its flaws to it as well. They can get tagged. They're quite large. But at the same time, if I, maybe perhaps skill out my earlier games and then I can get into Marines, then hopefully it goes well. So win, lose, just want to play well.
That's it. Just
the philosophy.
Play the best you can. And I think I'm on a similar kind of thing here. I'm playing with a really cool army that I enjoy playing. So I'm going in hoping to just enjoy every game. I mean, we can touch on this point now. I feel like there have been worse indirect metas where I can hear the
wait,
sound.
Wait, hold up.
Do you want to do this?
You said something. You said something good there. I was about to submit Thousand Suns to the tournament because I really love the army, and I was hoping that they'd have a good matchup in the Desolation Marines. And I was about to ask you the day before submission if I could borrow some more Terminators, but I think I was close to the same boat. Where it was like, well, if the meta has so many variables at the moment that are just completely out of your player skill control, then perhaps I should be looking at something where I could do well, but I will also get a hell of a time playing. And I'm still addicted to casting spells.
I mean, yeah, fair enough. And the key thing is we've got to go and be able to enjoy this event. And I think the Desolation Marine profile does allow you to still have some element of a game going second. Obviously, you've got to. You're completely right. You've got to tech in with some of your own tools, and some part of that is often some indirect fire.
Yeah.
And I think even if I go second with my list, I'll be able to give the Desolation Marine list a game. And there's nothing sweeter than the look of panic when someone has underestimated what you're about to do and found themselves caught in your trap. And I'm just going to live for those moments through this tournament.
Some unsuspecting non-player that we just mentioned is going to fall into Vic's trap as well. Yeah. It's good. I mean, it's going to be in London. There are going to be a ton of great people there as well. So it's great. It's our backyard. It's my backyard. Well, it's still an hour out, but relatively my backyard as well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's nice. I mean, I won the last London Open last time I was on, so it'd be nice to take the crown again. But it's also important to be super realistic, right? Like, you still got to play the game to have fun, and even in a meta like this, you can still make bad decisions or bad play mistakes. So it's still important to play well.
So, talking about a meta like this, I think we should do a little jazz break and a little last section just on the upcoming balanced data slate.
All right, guys, we're back. But Vic is going to be kicking it off because we've been talking a little bit in the team recently, and as you could probably guess, the podcast here is an extension somewhat of our team conversations, right? Because obviously Vic and I are both involved in it, but we talk about similar topics all the time, and there are, of course, times where differing opinions emerge on historical events and the subject of interpretation of those events. So, Vic, you were just about to open the can of worms, which is you thought that in the past the indirect meta has been actually worse than this.
Yeah, so I've lived through this game for a bit now.
Okay, I think it's important, I think, up front to clarify what you mean by indirect.
Yes. So for me, my definition of indirect fire includes both directly indirect units, Thunderfire cannons, Hive Guard, airburst fragmentation launchers, the current Desolation Marines, and the Orc buggies, all of those, and also includes flyers. For me, flyers play a very similar kind of role where they get in behind you and there's no hiding from them. So that is, we've been through many, many metas with flyers. I'm not going to go through all of them.
I've played both of these most suppressive lists, by the way. So
yeah. So in my opinion, the damage profiles on those particular indirect fire metas and flyer metas meant that if you went second into them, it doesn't matter what you have. If you have the same list, if you have any list, any faction, you are almost definitely losing the game going second. Now, I feel in this particular meta, both with mortars and also the profile on Desolation Marines are worse, they're AP2. Both of them do not ignore cover, and their strength is below 7. So I believe that you can tailor your list to deal with them in a way that was impossible to do before. Now, I think we are maybe talking about slightly different points here, but I'll let Dave hit his counter argument.
Yeah, so I think from the perspective of playing both of these, so I came fifth at LVO when I was the preeminent Crusher Stampede player, and that was when Hive Guard were ultimately at their peak. You had the 8th edition Tyranid Codex with Crusher Stampede on top, and then you had the Leviathan supplement on top. You're effectively playing with 3 books here. Mm-hmm. And that's when you could have Exploding Sixes, Chapter Masters, blah, 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 on Hive Guard, shoot twice, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. Now, that in isolation was very powerful indirect. Don't get me wrong, 100%. And player plays terrain only exacerbated that. However, in the top 8, there was only 2 people playing that, myself and Alex McDougall. And then in the top 8, then I'll move into the next point. As well. No, this is for LVO.
Oh, for LVO. Okay, yeah.
And then the counterpoint, I played Admech Flyers. I didn't play like the 6. I played, I think, 3 at most. And then I played Harpies with Tyranids, obviously, of course. Mm-hmm. The difference there is that Tyranids were strong regardless of whether or not you had Harpies. Mm-hmm. And Harpies weren't kind of the single warping thing. They rounded out your army to a point where, it covered a lot of flaws that you had because, obviously you didn't have a lot of direct shooting reach, or you couldn't get around corners. The difference between aircraft and indirect was that you could always lose your aircraft going second, of course. So mm-hmm. there's a level of interactability with aircraft that there actually aren't with pure indirect fire. Mm-hmm. And what I would say is that in the metas, if we just consider indirect fire, the reason it feels different to me now is that when I played LVO top 8, for example, there were other armies in the meta that challenged the indirect fire datasheet, i.e. Hive Guard, through non-indirect fire, right? So you could play Thick City, for example. You could play Custodes. Grey Knights were good then, and of Adeptus Mechanicus, won by Richard Siegler, of course, as well. So the reason why that, for me, didn't feel as bad was because it doesn't create this arms race of, like, the only best way to deal with this indirect fire is through stacking my own indirect fire. You could be like, well, actually, I've got really OP defensive data sheets here. Like, I'm just going to roll with those, and I'll just tank all your indirect fire because that's how good my data sheets are. And that period feels a little bit different from this period, where I think a lot of the players are either opting to just roll the dice and alpha strike you, or like myself, and then or play indirect fire to match their indirect fire. And essentially, what you're doing there is you're just hoping to indirect fire off their indirect fire to an extent, right? And that's where it feels different. Is that I really don't like that the only answer is indirect fire, because a lot of the other data sheets get shelled out because the Vengal launchers are so tough. And it's not the fact that the Vengal launchers, obviously, we can't ignore the fact that actually they have a direct fire Dark Lance on top of them as well, which if they only had the indirect fire, I think it would actually maybe be okay. But the problem is that they actually have the direct fire as well, which just, why do they have that?
You see, I think the underlying problem with the Desolation Marines is not actually the unit itself, because the unit itself in isolation is on the verge of okay, in my opinion. I know this is outrageous to everyone listening to this, but if you put that particular unit in a number of different factions, it's okay. But I think because it's within Marines in a situation where a lot of their units are undercosted, the entire army put together is quite oppressive to deal with. And I don't think that is on the back of the Desolation Marines themselves being overpowered. I think it's the back of the entire army being undercosted. And the Desolation Marines are the sprinkle. They're the final finishing touch that creates an element of attrition.
Yeah, so it's the context of the meta that matters a lot, right? Mm-hmm. As to whether or not it amplifies them. And I think, you and I are thinking along the same lines there as well, actually, is that the context of the meta when I played indirect was actually a lot different, because there were answers to indirect outside of indirect itself. Mm-hmm. You didn't see everyone just playing a Hive Guard, right? Like, people weren't like, I'm going to play 12 Hive Guard to counter your 6. It was like, no, actually, there are a lot of other armies that are super viable there. You had Custodians that could turn off full rerolls, Transhuman on bikes back then. They were fast, they could tag.
You had Tau with indirect fire.
The Tau meta was a little bit different as well.
It was at the same time, though, wasn't it? There was like a small overlap between the two.
Yeah, I mean, LVO was played before the Talbook came out.
But I don't think we should put too much just on LVO, because there are times in very recent history where there have been things like the Imperial Fist artillery gun line, which was truly a first turn just win list. There was almost nothing in the game that could stand up against that.
Yeah, I will 100% grant you that that is more oppressive than Desolation Marines. Grant, 100% no argument from me, but that's a little bit too far back in my opinion.
I would also say the Orc buggies are almost impossible to win going second into because of the level of indirect fire. But I also agree with you that this is the first time we're kind of seeing indirect fire versus indirect fire at such a high quantity. But I don't think that's on the back of how good the Desolation Marines are. I think that's because of two factors. And probably the primary factor is that the UK meta has kind of transitioned into this stage where the top players are switching armies just on the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
We play so many major events where all of the good players attend that people try and get ahead of the meta and really jump onto the new hotness. And Manchester was a complete anomaly. You don't see like 10 out of 12 of the top players all switching to this new unit. That's so rare.
So goes to show you how accelerated it is over here, though. Really,
the game, and it's getting worse. Like that's a big part which wasn't necessarily there. Crusher Stampede was an amazing list at the time. So was Hail of Doom. But if those lists existed now, I think we would see people jump onto them immediately when the rules are out.
You think so? No,
I think so.
No way, man. Crusher Stampede will get absolutely obliterated if you win second.
You know,
guarantee.
The strongest list, in my opinion, in 9th edition was the Liquefier Rack Spam, which got nerfed very quickly. Now, there were 2 tournaments before that got nerfed where it was not prolific, but I think now people would have just 3D printed them in an instant and just brought them out to a tournament, and we would have seen 90% of the top of the meta playing it.
I 100% agree. I just don't agree that Crusher Stampede would be the pinnacle example of that, because you have 18 word monsters and people would just walk their Desolation Marines out and shoot you off the board.
Crusher Stampede and Tyranids at that particular time were really strikingly confusing why they weren't popular, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's true. It was only Innes Wilson and I that actually won tournaments with it, if I recall correctly.
It was just a low play rate as well. It was just weird. It was only towards kind of the end, after the new codex came out and everything, that the popularity really started to spike up. But that was very late and very slow. So yeah, okay, we're drifting off away from the point. But I think the fundamental point is that no one likes an indirect fire meta. We've lived through multiple of them, and all of them suck.
They all suck. Yeah. You suck if you're playing Desolation Marines. No, it's tough, isn't it? Really. I mean, it's a beautiful game as well. So it's a little bit of a shame that we have had to wait so long for this brilliant segue, which is the balanced data slate, which is, we were all hoping that this balanced data slate would drop before the submission. At least those of us not playing Desolation Marines in general, because I think there are some very obvious points. And having said that, here's the thing, Vic. I know that the GW reps did go to the previous Manchester tournament, and I know that they pay attention to these things now. And because the balanced data slate, I'm not going to say it's been delayed, because they did in some articles reference to when it would come out after Easter and whatnot. However, they've had the Easter break, 4-day weekend, to think about anything else they want to put in there. So I've got a little bit of a good feeling that actually there's going to be about 7 or 8, maybe 9 different changes across like 3 or 4 factions here that are it's actually going to overhaul or tone down. They're going to hit a lot of stuff all at once, in my opinion.
I hope so. I hope they go in that direction rather than allowing the meta to just crumple and die to create excitement for 10th.
Yeah.
Which would also be like a business tactic, that could work. But I think it would be better for them just to ride momentum of goodwill from the community moving into 10th. And I agree with you. I'm really hopeful, and I'm quite confident that they will make a handful of changes that will be impactful to the game. This meta is solvable. With just a few changes, I think, and it could be one of a huge number of changes. So hopefully they can't miss the mark.
Yeah. Well, I think in the beginning, I said that I was going to give some unbiased opinions on how to balance. I think here is my genuine, honest take, and it'll be interesting to see if you think this is like too much, too little, or something like that. So for Guard, There we go. I'd move Inflexible Command to 1 point per bullet point that you can score. So maximum of 3 points if you have all your tanks, infantry, and you kill a unit under an order in 1 turn. Maximum 3. So 15 if you have Inflexible Command and kill everything and do everything for the whole game, which seems fair. Boots on the ground, I would leave as is. I think that's actually a pretty balanced secondary. Now, I think the way I would tackle Guard is I would remove the core keyword from mortars. Now, this would mean that you can still put 4 rerolls to hit on them from Leontis, I believe, but you wouldn't be able to get 4 rerolls to hit and wound. They wouldn't get the finial, and they wouldn't get reroll 1s to hit and wound. So maybe you would just take like 1 or 2 squads, maybe, because they would still get boots on the ground, and I would leave the points and everything else the same as is. Then I would... the next one's tough. I'll cap the Cassigans at 6 mortal wounds total for the unit. Of course. But would I put the points up on some things? I would put 5 points up on Scout Sentinels, maybe.
Let's assume that you can't do points changes.
Okay, can't do points changes. Yeah. I think that would be just about it. The other ones you could do is take core away from Cassigan or Sentinels.
That would be the one I would consider.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you take core away from Cassigan, they still get the 4 rolls to hit, and you're obviously fishing for 5s to hit anyway. So that doesn't actually do that much. And taking core away from Sentinels, it just it really removes a lot of the flavor of them. I think maybe you can't give Sentinels Prefectus orders. That kind of makes sense, maybe. So maybe I would do that change as well. And I think that would tone down. It would just shave off the edges of some of the things off. It wouldn't fundamentally, I could play the same list, but it just wouldn't be as powerful, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that's a very fair take, because I think Guard are potentially a little bit overrated in the community. They're very, very good, but I think it's very easy just to nerf them into the ground, into nothingness.
And they've done that a lot. Tyranids, they just nerfed into the ground.
Eventually. We have to say eventually.
But, it's just not healthy. I said that when they got nerfed as well, right? I said it's just not healthy to nerf armies into the ground. It's just,
yeah.
I mean, if they deserve it or not, sure. But all in all, it's not healthy for the game.
That's the Guard side. I think that's a really good take on it.
Yeah. Baharat should go up 20 points, right?
He's already gone up twice. He keeps going up. They just messed up that unit. It's too late now. You guys have to deal with that now until 10th. I think on the Marine side, I think the fixes are very simple. The problem is that you can't. I would love it if they did it on the point side. It would be so easy just to increase the cost of, Deathwing Terminators.
Put them up 5, sure.
It'll just take 10 seconds. Just do it, and then job done. And then just change Codex Warfare, or make it so that the doctrines, you can't just pick and stay in whatever doctrine you want to.
Yeah.
And I think Marines will be fine if they don't have Devastator Doctrine all the way through the game, or they just have it on turn 1 like they used to. I think that just covers so many of the problems that Marines have at the moment.
Yeah. Maybe it's this sounds bizarre, but maybe they create a generic stratagem for Marines where you have to pay 3 CP to activate the doctrine for your entire army, and 3 CP would mean that you would have to start on more CP, and you only net 2 per battle round, so you couldn't really just spam it and keep yourself in the doctrine, but it would still kind of give you the flexibility of maybe having it for the 1 turn, or...
But it's just really cool and thematic for Marines to switch from Devastator Doctrine to Tactical to Assault. That's just how they flow. That's their codex. So,
but for them, maybe if they go back to rolling through the doctrines, they should flip Codex Warfare around the other way, where you score more points later on in the game, right? For in close combat or rapid fire weapons or something like that.
I think the reason they've done it is because Devastator Doctrine only should last for 1 turn, whereas Tactical and Assault Doctrine both can last for more turns.
Yep. They can last longer, but they're more manageable, right?
They are more manageable.
Ravenwing obviously benefit from Devastator Doctrine the most.
I think this is a big kind of thing that the rule inside of the GT book was written before the balance change to Marines. So it's been designed with doctrines in the old way, and it's been released at a time when doctrines are being allowed to be chosen whenever they want, which is outrageous on Devastator Doctrine, which is already the best doctrine anyway. So fix that, please, GW.
And it creates just a completely one-dimensional way of list building, right? There's no real room for creative expression there to a degree, right?
Yeah. I would actually completely leave the Desolation Marines as they are. And I would just make Devastator Doctrine only last for one turn and adjust the points on Deathloom Terminators. And I think you actually have a balanced meta at that point.
Because then they stay at AP1, right? Which is a huge difference to being AP2 constantly.
So manageable for an almost 200-point unit. That is not enough indirect fire.
Yeah. Because maybe, for example, your opponent plays a little bit of indirect that can kill your Desolation Marines, which are going to be more expensive than their indirect. And all of a sudden it's like, well, do I play them? Do I not?
Well, you don't even do the indirect war. You just have so many profiles that are defensively can survive against that. Yes, it would be meta warping. There would be a lot of units that you can't run. Same with Mortars. Mortars and Desolation Marines will have the same profile, essentially.
Yeah.
But, that's completely manageable. Very easy to deal with.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. Like, maybe the conversation would turn from playing 15 Desolation Marines to, like, maybe I play 5 because it rounds out my army in a lot of matchups, and then maybe the guard player is like, maybe I play 1 Earthshaker and 2 Mortars, in case I hit the Desolation Marines and Marines in general, sort of thing. Which is a lot more manageable than, okay, I need to play more than my opponent. The way it currently is, of course.
Yeah.
Not that I'm playing more, by the way. I'm only playing 360 points of Earthshaker units, which is not even 2 squads of Desolation Marines.
I'm hoping that they will do a couple of changes to secondaries, because I think that's a big part of this.
Yeah.
That would be able to balance things quite well. I think it's very unlikely that some of the weaker factions will get touched in this and improved.
Oh, you think so?
I think we'd be very lucky if that was the case.
I think Deathwatch is owed to maybe get a buff. If they're going to rework doctrines, maybe they'll look at Deathwatch as well. It's pretty obvious.
Deathwatch will just be outrageous if they mess them up. I'm so glad they didn't mess them up.
Yes, they do get a lot of free walk.
Yeah, it's just it would be really silly. I'm so glad that they kind of missed a couple of things on them because they would just be utterly broken.
I can't wait to play you when Deathwatch is so good. I get all my rerolls at once just randomly.
Yeah, and that's kind of it. I don't know, Dave. Did you have any other things you would love to see?
No, I mean maybe touching transhuman or something to do with the Raven Wing. Maybe just removing the invulnerable, so it's always a 5-up instead of a 4-up when you advance. I don't know, so but if they change Devastator Doctrine, obviously you don't get that as much. So that'd be a good way to hit it, really, wouldn't it?
We'll see. Probably when people listen to this, the Dataslate may be out at that time or on the same day. Yeah. I'm expecting Thursday this week.
Ooh. Okay, GSC, they're going to change a secondary or 2 as well. So.
Oh yes, probably yes. That makes sense.
And then I don't think any other faction will really. I hope they do a little bit with Thousand Suns, maybe. Because I know they do have a low win rate. My theory is that they look at the top 2 and the bottom 2, and then that's where they move it up and then move it down.
Yeah, that's very likely.
And then there's a new top 2, and then all the good players play that top 2, and its win rate goes huge as well, of course.
As long as it's squished and it's all around the middle, that means you can play like more interesting factions, whatever you want, and still have a chance. That's the perfect meta. So yeah, at the moment we've got kind of the Marine factions a little bit too strong.
Yep. Well, they were terrible for a long time, so, maybe it's fair. Maybe we're paying our taxes, aren't we?
Strong, not broken. That's the aim.
Exactly. Strong, not broken. Episode 19, we're chatting about the London Open. Hopefully we're going to be coming back after this weekend with a teammate or one of us. We coming back with the dub. So we'll see. It's going to be another stacked top 4 regardless of what it is. If it's a top 2, top 4. I hope it's a top 2. I hope it's a top 4, sorry.
Top 4, I hope so too.
Yeah, that would be amazing. 150 players, it should be a top 4. That's what we're hoping for. Episode 19, we're going to be coming back with episode 20 with the W. Team Ignite, me Vic, me David. We're going to survive the desolation. Oh, God. We're not. So we're just gonna play some games. Just gonna play some 40k, man. That's it at the end of the day. Thank you very much for listening, guys. If you've gotten this far, really appreciate it. I know all those Spotify listeners and everything else. You guys just keep it rolling to the end. So wherever you're doing, if you're on your morning commute, you're in the going for a walk in the park, or you're just doing some work listening to us babble, thank you very much. Really appreciate your support. We're going to be doing some interesting things for 1,000 subscribers, hopefully, or whatever benchmark we want to hit. We got plans to continue the podcast for the rest of the year, haven't we? So nothing stopping us.
Brilliant. Yeah, and thanks for listening, guys. Take care, and we'll see you after the London Open.
Cheers. Thank you for listening to the 40k Fireside podcast. Vic and I hope you've enjoyed listening, and we greatly appreciate any feedback that you can provide after the show.